All right. Well, it's a quarter to 3 in the morning, and I'm up again. Um, this keeps happening. I keep waking up around this time. And when I wake up at this time, I have different things going through my mind. Not things that I've chosen or anything, but just things that I find myself thinking of these things for some reason at 3 o'clock in the morning. And when I wake up, uh, I don't want to be up. I very much rather be asleep. But I am up, and these ideas are going through my mind, these thoughts. And so I'm going to share them. I feel like I should share them, and I'm going to. Some may disagree with me. Some may say, no, no, you shouldn't be sharing them, but I'm going to share them. I feel kind of like these are assigned topics, I guess you could say, and I'm going to share them. And I can't sleep, so why not? I'll share what I'm thinking anyway. I'll share what I'm waking up with on my mind. And tonight's assigned topic is Canada, which is my home country. It's where I live, it's where I was born. And the spirit of Antichrist, which is very powerful here in Canada now. And, like any country, we've always had corruption. We've always had, there's bad things have always happened here. Canada is part of the world, and the world, it's a fallen world. So, uh, we do have some things in our history that aren't great. But the spirit of Antichrist was never active here like it is at the present time. I mean, it was always active to a degree. It's active all over the world to a degree all the time, but it was never active like it is now. I think that's true throughout the world, but here in Canada, it's really active, and in fact, throughout the world, Canada is being talked about because of it. Canada has become a topic of conversation, and not for a good reason. Um, I want to share a piece of history with you guys that you may not be aware of. During World War II, of course, we all know that the spirit of Antichrist was really active in Germany during World War II. And in the concentration camps, at least in one camp in particular, I can't recall now which camp it was. They had so many of them, these camps where they were doing wholesale murder of Jewish people in particular, but not just Jewish people. There were others too that they targeted. Although the Jews were the main target because the Jews were the scapegoat. The Jews were the ones that were blamed for all the problems. And in this new world order, although I don't think they called it that back then, that old funny mustache man had in mind what he wanted to build. Um, he had convinced the people that in order for that new world, this utopian paradise he was going to create, to be workable, the Jewish people had to go because the Jews were responsible for all the bad stuff. That's basically what it was. He made them the scapegoat. They spread disease. They are greedy. They, mess with our finances. They mess with our lives. They are this. They are that. They have to go. That was the narrative, and he drilled that into people's heads, and people believed it. And people wanted to believe it because people like a scapegoat. People like to have something other than themselves to blame for their problems. Hey, I'm homeless. I'm living in a camper in a field. Must be the Jews that did that to me. Yeah, I had nothing to do with it. I didn't make bad decisions. I didn't trust people I shouldn't have trusted. I didn't mismanage my money. I didn't give my money to a damn con artist, in exchange for a truck that didn't work, all the rest of it. No, it's not my fault. It's the Jews. I feel much better now. Nothing's my fault. I have a whole group of people I can blame everything on. You know, I mean, well, not really, but you know what I mean. Wouldn't it be nice? Wouldn't it be nice if it wasn't? If I hadn't made any mistakes, if my decisions had all been good ones, but I got foiled by some other group, and it's all their fault, and I wouldn't have to accept any responsibility for my situation. Um, that's basically what's Funny Mustache Man offered to the people of Germany at that time, in order that he could push his agenda, which was an Antichrist agenda. The spirit of Antichrist was working very hard at that time in Germany, in Europe, and in Germany in particular. And a lot of the things that were done at that time were done, because of the spirit of Antichrist, because of really demonic entities that were really active back then. And but I'll relate a story to you. This is what I have heard. In one of the camps, if the guards wanted to reward a prisoner, this very seldom happened, but if a guard wanted to reward a prisoner, what they used to do is, because they used to take all the valuables away from the people, before they murdered them. They'd take all their stuff, and they rob you. Not enough to murder you; they got to rob you too. They'd even take the gold fillings out of your teeth. Um, that's the, that's just how insidious the whole thing was. But there was a room where, if they decided to reward a prisoner for some service that prisoner had performed for them, they'd take the prisoner to this room, and in the room there was a table, and on the table there were various items that had been looted from prisoners, you know, and, things that would be regarded as luxuries in the camp. Simple things that we take for granted. But if you're in that situation, it'd be a real luxury. Things like a hand mirror, or a hairbrush, or a toothbrush, or, a little bit of chocolate, or a little bit of tea, a packet of tea, or whatever, some food item that you'd never get normally. Um, things like that. Little comforts that these people have been deprived of in the camps. Anyway, they called that room Canada. They'd say, "We'll take you to Canada. You've done good. We want to reward you for what you did. We're going to take you to Canada." And that's what they called that room. Canada was seen as the land of opportunity. I know they call the United States the land of opportunity, but that room wasn't called USA. They didn't say we're going to take you to America. We're going to take you to the USA. We're going to take you to Canada, is what they said. The German soldiers who were captured in Europe, a lot of them were brought to Canada as prisoners of war. A lot of them were kept in prisoner of war camps out west. out on the prairies in the middle of nowhere, because that's a good place to have a prison camp for prisoners of war, because if they escape, where are they going to go? What are they going to do? Where are they going to go? And so they used to have a lot of prisoner of war camps out there. And they treated the prisoners well. These German soldiers that were captured, they were treated really well in these prisoner of war camps. And a lot of them fell in love with Canada. And it sounds strange to think of it, how this country, which was an enemy to them, and how they were held prisoner in this country after they got captured, how they came to love Canada. A lot of them did. And after the war, a lot of them immigrated to Canada. A lot of them returned to Canada and became full-time residents here. Just think about that. I mean, if you were a German soldier, if you had to be taken prisoner, if it was inevitable, it was going to happen, you wanted to be taken prisoner by the Canadian Army, because the Canadian Army was known to have compassion for prisoners. Now, there is another side to it. And I know this because I had a great uncle who was in the war, and I know for a fact that this happened, and people will get mad at me for saying it, but it did happen. There were times that they had to shoot German prisoners of war to death on the spot when they captured them. And they used to put prisoners of war to death on a regular basis. Now, the reason they did this isn't because they wanted to commit war crimes or anything like that. The reason they did it is because they were often outnumbered by their prisoners, and prisoner of war camps in Europe weren't always around the corner and down the block. Sometimes it would be hundreds of miles of a march to turn these prisoners into a jail, basically, where they could be held. And then after that, sent to Canada or wherever as prisoners of war to sit out the duration of the war. That wasn't always practical. They were often outnumbered by their prisoners. And according to the rules of warfare, if you're a prisoner of war, if you see an opportunity to turn the tables on your captors, you have to do it. They did, and these guys, they had jobs to do. They had to go on to the next place. They couldn't backtrack somewhere so they could turn a bunch of prisoners in. It'd be several days, possibly, to get these prisoners to a camp, to a proper prisoner of war camp. And so, oftentimes, out of necessity, they did execute prisoners of war on the spot. And that's just an ugly truth of warfare. And my great uncle, he actually had to do that sometimes. And it broke his heart. He was racked with guilt over that, But that was something that he had done. And like I say, not because he wanted to, but out of necessity, he had done it. And that's something that isn't talked about very much. We don't like to think of our side doing things like that. But like I say, you got to bear in mind where they were and what they were up against. And just the practicalities of the whole thing. So some people may be furious with me for saying that. I don't say it to dishonor veterans. I don't think we can judge those men for doing that. My great uncle Bill was a good man. He was a very compassionate man. He was a very loving man. And he was a hard worker. And he had a heart of gold. And I know he was racked with guilt over that, because he told my dad, and he didn't talk about the war very much, Those guys didn't talk about it very much. But he told my dad the truth. And, but he also explained why they had done it. And it was not with evil intent. It was because they didn't have a choice, just due to the reality of the situation they were in. Anyway, for those who were able to be transported to prisoner of war camps and dispatched to Canada, a lot of them really came to love this country and love it to the point where they wanted to come back here. And a lot of them did. A lot of them immigrated here in the late 40s and the early 50s. A lot of those men came back here. They brought their wives and their children here. And they made lives for themselves in this country. That's how highly Canada was thought of at one time. And like I say, Canada was not without blemish. No country is. The Antichrist spirit works everywhere. So let's be clear about that too. And has worked everywhere for thousands of years. But Canada stood out as an exception in the sense that the spirit of Antichrist seemed to work less here than in some other places. And it was seen as a land of opportunity compared to many other places. It was seen as a land of abundance compared to many other places. It was seen as a land where you stood a chance. If you had half a brain and were willing to work, you could make a go of it in Canada. That was in the 1940s and 50s and 60s and 70s, 80s, right up into the early 1990s when things started to change. And we've been on a downhill slide since the early 1990s. I've seen it. I lived in the 1970s and 80s. So I caught the tail end of that great era for this country. And even then, I mean, back in the 70s even, our current Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, his father, Pierre Trudeau, was Prime Minister. And he started, he did a lot of damage. Let's just put it that way. He was a very charismatic individual. He was a lot smarter than his son. But he was diabolical, and he did a lot of damage. And his son is now finishing the job that he started. Only his son is a twit. Like, his son is not intelligent. Like the son was not blessed with the intelligence and the charisma of the father. He really wasn't. Anyway, and that's if we go along with the idea that Justin Trudeau is Pierre Trudeau's son. There's a lot of people who think otherwise. Fidel Castro has been blamed for Justin Trudeau's existence, and that could very well be. Margaret Trudeau was, anyway. If you look into Margaret Trudeau, you'll know what I'm talking about. Yeah. And that Margaret Trudeau is Pierre Trudeau's wife, Justin Trudeau's mother. Anyway, getting back to the spirit of Antichrist, a lot of the things that were happening in Germany in the 1930s, a lot of that stuff is happening here now. The suppression of free speech. That's a big one. The suppression of free speech. If you have an opinion that runs against or counter to the regime, we will shut you up. Police officers are being dispatched to people's houses to warn them that they better stop making posts on Facebook or YouTube or Twitter or whatever. I may get a visit someday. It's a wonder I haven't already been visited. But the OPP are aware of where I am. They actually do know where I am. So they've been out here. So they do know where I am. They've actually been out here to see me. After my cat Muella was killed by a fisher, I was falsely accused of decapitating her. And I was investigated by the OPP, and they came out here. So the OPP are aware of where I am anyway. And It's a wonder I haven't had a visit from them over these posts. Perhaps God is protecting me. I don't know. I mean, that could be. I do feel like I'd be disobedient to God if I didn't make these videos. No, maybe I'm delusional, but I feel that, and that's why I do it at 2 o'clock and 3 o'clock in the morning. It's now 10 after 3 in the morning, and I'm here in my bed making this video, and I wake up with these thoughts going through my mind. Anyway, Canada used to be a very highly respected country. I'm sure it didn't deserve the level of respect it had, but it had it. And it deserved it more than it does now. And the thing is, now it doesn't have the respect. Now Canada's a laughingstock. People are concerned about Canada. In the United States, where they at least have a strong constitution, where they frame up people's rights in absolute terms, where they say, this is your right, absolutely. This is your God-given right to do this. The government isn't giving this to you, God is. Whatever it happens to be, whether it's free speech or whether it's the right to bear arms, whether it's the right not to self-incriminate, whether it's the right not to be deprived of property or of your liberty unreasonably, whether it's the right to pursue, as they say, to the pursuit of happiness, whatever that means to you as an individual, and so on. The U.S. Constitution is really strong, and it's strong to the point now where those who are possessed of the spirit of Antichrist in government in the United States, they're having to literally break the law of the land in order to bring things in that are anti-constitutional. They're literally saying, F the Constitution, we're going to do it anyway. That's what's going on. Now here they don't have to say that because our Constitution is weak. And our Constitution has all kinds of qualifying phrases in it. Yeah, you have the right to free expression. You don't have the right to free speech in Canada. You have the right to free expression, whatever that means. That's open to interpretation. And there's a caveat in there of within reasonable limits, which again is open to interpretation. Because what you think is reasonable, I may not, and vice versa. There will be people who see this video and they won't think that it's reasonable that I be allowed to do this. They'll say, who is he anyway, and why is he allowed to speak? The guy's an idiot, or the guy's wrong, or the guy's a subversive. He's saying things that are dangerous. There are people that will see this video and say that. And there are also people who will see this video and say, he doesn't go far enough. Yeah, he touches on it, but he don't go far enough. He needs to be more militant. He needs to step up his game. And there are people who will say right on, he's nailed it. They'll be all free that see this video. But the bottom line is, so it goes to show, when you make something subject to interpretation, it goes by who interprets it. Where are they coming from? Because we all have our own place and our own space that we're coming from. And so, what I think is dangerous militant speech, another person might think doesn't go far enough. What I think isn't going far enough, another person might think goes too far. You see. And so we have a very watered down, very weak constitution, and so it's easy to do that to us. And of course, we're the upstairs neighbor of the United States. We're right above them. We have the world's longest undefended border. We do, the border between Canada and the United States. And so what I believe is happening is the spirit of Antichrist is really strong here. And it isn't even so much to target us, it's to target the United States, because the United States has such a strong constitution, and that needs to be chipped away and eroded and done away with in order, and forgotten about and disregarded, in order for the spirit of Antichrist to do its job, you know, which is to enslave and subjugate the masses. So it's happening here first, and Americans are noticing. I've seen videos where American people have said, some of them in the U.S. government, who are recognizing what's happening down there, and they're saying, hell, we got this in Canada. This is going on in Canada, and it's coming here, and we don't want it. The few good people who are working within the U.S. government who do see it, and are decent people, and there aren't very many at this point, but the ones who are have cited Canada as an example of where they don't want to go. They're saying you don't want to go there. You don't want to be like Canada. And all over the world, Canada is being held up as an example of what you don't want. Um, you know, but imagine though, in the concentration camps in the 1940s, a prisoner would be taken to Canada. They'd be taken to the room with the table with the pretty things on it, and allowed to choose one item. If they had performed some service that their overseers, that their persecutors and their murderers decided was worthy of allowing them to have some little comfort in that horrible place. Then you got to go to Canada. A table with somebody's used toothbrush on it, somebody who had already been murdered by the regime. But see, that was considered a place of abundance, because that's where all the little comforts were. And it was called Canada. The Germans themselves named it that. It wasn't the prisoners who named it that. It was the ones who were doing all the killing. They said, "This is Canada. We're going to take you to Canada because you've done good. So we're going to take you to Canada. You can choose one item off this table in Canada." So that's how highly Canada was thought of, even our enemies, when they chose a name for this place where there were all these little comforts that a prisoner they wanted to reward could have. They chose to name it Canada. Like I say, the German prisoners of war, for the most part, came to love Canada. And quite a number of them did immigrate here and start their lives after the war here. They came here as legal residents, and they spent their entire lives from that point on proudly as Canadian citizens. And you couldn't say a word against this country to them. And you spoke against Canada to those guys, I'll tell you, they were very loyal Canadian citizens. You'd be liable to get a punch in the mouth if you told some German immigrant that you didn't like Canada. At the very least, they would put you in your place pretty quick. We've fallen greatly in this country. In my lifetime, I've seen it. The spirit of Antichrist is strong here, and a lot of the things that happened in Germany are beginning to happen here. Like I say, the suppression of free speech. A lot of the corruption, the encouragement of the use of narcotics. In Germany, they had everybody on speed. And you can research this. If you think I'm lying, you can find all this stuff out for yourself. You don't have to take my word for it. In Germany, during the war, and in the 1930s too, they had people taking speed pills. Most of the population was on speed. They encouraged the use of substances. They legalized substances. They encouraged the use of them. Again, that was in Germany at that time. Now, the one difference is the Germans weren't into the whole LGBTQ thing like we are here. In fact, many of the ones who were tortured and murdered in the camps were LGBTQ individuals. I don't think they used those terms back then, but people who would fit that category or that description. They were also targeted for destruction because Hitler didn't want the mustache man there. He didn't want people like that in his utopian paradise he was going to build. So, because he decided people like that had to go. So, no, we didn't. They didn't have all the celebration of that we have here. But still, the constant pushing of this stuff and the constant celebration of it has, in many ways, degraded us because it's been taken to an extreme. It isn't a matter of just acknowledging that these people have a right to exist and to function within our country and to live their lives peacefully and, and not to be actively persecuted and interfered with, which I'm fine with myself. I think that's perfectly reasonable that we don't actively interfere and persecute any group of people within society. But it's gone to the extreme now where we're required to celebrate these things. It's not enough to say, yeah, they have a right to exist and they're going to exist and we need to let them exist and we need to let them live and we need to let them pursue their dreams and their happiness, whatever that means to them. That's not enough now. We have to be cheerleaders. And we have to even say that these people are superior to us. It isn't even a matter of not being allowed to put ourselves above them, which we shouldn't be doing. But now we have to say that they are superior to us, or we're criminals. So that's a degrading thing. That's an attack on the family, on the traditional family, which the country was built on. It's an attack on Christian values, which the country was built on, and so on. It's a spirit of Antichrist operating in just a slightly different way than it did in Germany in those terrible years of the 1930s and 40s. Anyway, moving along, we also have our MAID program here, Medical Assistance in Dying. That's being applied to more and more people. If you're disabled, they want to put you to death. That's what they want to do. They want to put you to death. Yeah. I mean, what do you say to that? If you're disabled, they want to put you to death. If you're mentally ill, if you're unable to work or whatever, whatever it is, they want to put you to death. They're expanding it to more and more people. People will say, oh, well, there's safeguards. You got to get 2 doctors to sign off. Yeah. The medical profession has been compromised in this country. That's another issue. The medical profession in this country has been compromised in a big way. And it's not hard to get 2 doctors to sign off on a corrupt thing. It really isn't. I mean, if you really want to do this, you can get 2 doctors to sign off. That will not be a problem. So let's not kid ourselves here. That is not a safeguard of any kind. It's just so that we can feel better about it. We can go, oh, well, you got to get 2 doctors to sign off. Yeah. No, it's just so we can feel better about it when we kill these people. That's all it is. Don't kid yourself. Getting 2 doctors to sign off on that in today's society, the way things are now, in this country, the way things are now, not difficult at all. A doctor that wouldn't sign off on it would be in the minority, regardless of the circumstance. So let's not kid ourselves. And in fact, the ones who don't sign off on it are probably persecuted and targeted for negative things. That wouldn't surprise me at all if you're a doctor who refuses to sign the document to put somebody to death because you follow your conscience and you follow God and you don't follow this wicked system. Chances are you're going to come in for some persecution. You're going to be identified as a troublemaker. You're not playing ball. What's wrong with you? Maybe you shouldn't be a doctor. Maybe we need to pull your license. Stop and think about this for a minute. During the whole scamdemic thing, when they were pushing in the arm, when they were doing that, in Canada, they fired a lot of nurses. Now, you're in a pandemic, so you say. Your hospitals are busting at the seams with people, with dead and dying people. This is what they told us. It all turned out to be lies. We know that now, but still, this is what they told us. And you're going to fire a shit ton of staff. I mean, yeah, this is what you're going to do in a pandemic. You're going to fire. I mean, right there, if that doesn't tell you it was all a big lie, I don't know what does. They fired any nurses who refused to take that thing. And there were quite a few. I mean, it was a sizable number. And we already had a shortage of medical personnel prior to that, even without a pandemic. And then they're saying, well, we're in a pandemic. The hospitals are overrun with COVID patients. People are dropping dead. It's horrific what's going on here. And oh, by the way, we're going to fire a quarter of our nurses because they won't take the old, experimental potion. Because they won't agree to be part of a drug trial for Pfizer, which when they signed up was never part of the job. What nurse became a nurse believing that he or she was going to be required to become a part of a drug trial? What we fired a whole bunch of our medical personnel, while at the same time claiming that our hospitals were overrun and busting at the seams with dying people. I mean, that's like claiming that you're starving to death for lack of food while you throw all your groceries away. Coming out of the grocery store with a cartload of food you just paid for and saying, I'm starving to death. And then throwing all the stuff in the ditch and going home empty-handed. It doesn't make any sense. It's like, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure it out. Rocky's just spilled his water, but it'll be in the jar there, I guess. That's what I've done. I put his water bowl in a plastic jar. But anyway, like I say, this is Canada. This is what's going on here. There's a strong spirit of Antichrist here. And there's a lot of people completely given over to it. Our government is infested with it. Our society is infested with it. Yeah, it's bad. Right now, what they're doing is, and this started again during the scamdemic, any dissident people like myself, I was a dissident because I didn't cooperate, and any dissident people You know, there was a lot of talk about putting us to death, you know, and there was a lot of blaming of us. Well, it's your fault that we can't get back to normal because you won't do what the government's telling you to do. And society turned on us in a big way. People were saying we need to build camps for these people. We need to put these people in the concentration camps. We need to put these people to death. We need to execute these people publicly to make an example of them. That's what people here were saying. Shades of Germany, circa 1935. That's what I take from it anyway. The medical profession was complicit in a lot of the atrocities that happened in Germany at that time. The medical profession here in Canada is complicit in what's happening here. I can't actually get medical treatment. I'm not allowed to go to a hospital because I'm a dissident. We have universal health care in Canada, except for people like me. I won't cooperate, so I'm not allowed to go to a hospital. If I get injured when I'm using a chainsaw in my work, if that chainsaw kicks back, which could happen, and I catch a friggin' chainsaw blade across the leg or across my face or whatever, I can't go to a hospital. If I slip on the ice and I break my leg outside here in the wintertime, I can't go to the hospital. A severe injury like that right now for me is a death sentence because I refuse to go along with the hospital's mandates, which are still in place even after this thing has been proven to be a fraud. It wasn't a pandemic, it was a scamdemic, and that's been proven, and yet they're still stubbornly clinging to it. You know, I mean, again, you would think it would be an ordeal, especially for the hospital people. You'd think they'd be happy to be done with it, but oh no, they're continuing it. I don't go along with that, so I'm not allowed to go to a hospital. If I get severely injured, I will die. When my kidneys shut down a couple years ago, I got thrown out of the hospital for not going along with their mandates. And the nurse who threw me out of the hospital, she actually told me, "You have chosen death over compliance." The word compliance is thrown around a lot now. And we're told that if we don't choose to be compliant, that we are choosing to die. I've been told that several times. I've been told at the bank, because I won't go along with what I see as the precursor to a digital ID, which is they want to tie my driver's license into my bank account, and I'm refusing to allow them to do it. I've been a customer of the Bank of Commerce, the Canadian Imperial Bank of Commerce, since the 1970s. I've had an account with them since I was around 9 or 10 years old, so going back to 1977, 1978. I've constantly had an account with the Bank of Commerce. And I'm known to the Bank of Commerce, and I'm a good customer. I don't have a lot of money. No, I'm not like I'm a billionaire or a millionaire with my money in their bank. But I pay my bills. I don't defraud the bank. I pay my bills. I have a line of credit and a credit card with the Bank of Commerce, which I make the payments on. I've been a really good customer to the Bank of Commerce, and I'm known to the bank as a good customer. I have a high credit rating. And because I refused to allow them to tie my driver's license in with my banking, I had to tell me the last time I was in the bank because she wanted to see my driver's license. I refused to show it to her. She said, "I need your ID." I pointed at my card, which was issued by the bank. I said, "There it is there." I had handed that to her. She said, "No, I need to see your driver's license." I said, "No, you don't need to see my driver's license." And she said, your non-compliance has been noted by the bank and it shall no longer be tolerated. Think about that for a minute. Does that sound like 1984, like George Orwell's 1984? To stand in the bank where you've had dealings for close to 50 years. I've dealt with that bank, different branches. I mean, mostly I dealt with the Perth branch. Now I'm in Smiths Falls. I'm dealing with the Smiths Falls branch primarily. But I've dealt with that bank as an organization since like 1977, nearly 50 years. I've always been a good customer of that bank. Like I say, I've never cheated them out of anything. If I owed them money, I paid it. And these people have the nerve to talk to me that way, to say, your non-compliance has been noted by the bank and it shall no longer be tolerated. Yeah. I mean, that was just the worst thing that she could possibly have said to me. Because now I'm more convinced than ever that there's something nefarious behind this whole driver's license thing. And I'm even more determined not to give them my driver's license. Why should my driver's license be tied to my banking? Doesn't make any sense. People who don't drive bank, you know. I asked them about that one day when I had refused to give them my license. Another time I was in there and I refused to give them my license. And I said, "Now what would happen if I lost my license? If I had to give up driving for some reason, or if I was ordered to give up driving for some reason? Or what if I just never had a driver's license?" So some people have never had a driver's license. There are people, even in this era, that have never driven a car. My mother's never driven a car. Never. She's only ever sat on the passenger side. She's never sat behind the steering wheel. I asked her, I said, "What are those people supposed to do?" She said, "Well, they would have to get an official government ID and show us that." Well, again, why do we need to show a government ID to bank? The bank is not the government. We're not buying anything prohibitive. I'm not in there looking, they don't sell firearms. I'm not in there looking to buy firearms or ammunition. They don't sell alcohol. I'm not in there looking to buy alcohol. They don't sell pornography. I'm not in there looking to buy pornography. They don't sell cannabis, which is legal in Canada now. I'm not in there looking to buy cannabis. Why do I have to show them government ID? I'm not driving a car in the bank and they're not the police. So again, they haven't pulled me over while I'm driving a car. They are not with the Ministry of Transportation. They have nothing to do with them, which issues the driver's license. I gave them my card, which they issued to me. The bank issued to me. And they said, "That's not good enough. We need to see your driver's license as well." No, you don't. And like I say, it only convinced me even more when she said that to me. Okay, there is something nefarious behind that. If I was doubting my own senses, I'm no longer doing that. This lady just proved to me that there is something nefarious behind this thing. Anyway, our banks are in on it, you know? And of course, when the digital ID comes, after that comes the social credit score, which we already have here, whether you believe it or not, in a way. It hasn't fully kicked in yet, but we do have it here. The social credit score will fully kick in when the digital ID kicks in. It requires the digital ID to fully kick in. And then we'll have the central bank programmable digital currency. And cash will be eliminated. And then, you have to participate in the system in order to eat. Well, what does the Bible say about the mark of the beast? You will not be able to buy nor will you be able to sell unless you receive the mark. That's where this is headed. All this stuff is a precursor to that. In fact, I'll go so far as to say the scamdemic was a precursor to that. They wanted to see how many people they could bully into compliance. How many people would just go along to get along. They were testing the waters for the mark of the beast. And in Canada, it was horrible. What went on was just horrible. What the police did to people, what the medical profession did to people, it was horrible. And it's still going on, although it's going on to a lesser degree. It is still going on. Like I say, I can't go to the hospital. If I get injured, I'm screwed. A severe injury to me means death. It's a death sentence. If I slip on the ice this winter coming out of this camper and I break my leg, I will die because I won't cooperate. My conscience won't allow me to cooperate. Plus, the other side of it is I can't breathe. When I put something over my face like that, I can't breathe. And I've told them that, and they've said, we don't care, you will comply, or you will leave. Yeah, real compassionate healers, they are. The woman, the nurse that threw me out of the hospital, was actually double masked. She had 2 masks over her face and a big plastic visor. Like, it's totally insane what's going on in this country. And the lack of compassion and the push to kill people, the push for women to have abortions, which now are happening spontaneously. There are all kinds of miscarriages because of that thing in the arm that they pushed. The push up, Rocky, you're very heavy, sweetie. The push for MAID and to expand it to more people. I watch another YouTuber who's a homeless man, and he's camped in the woods in my province of Ontario. He calls his channel Extra Cheesy Broccoli. I don't know why he calls it that. Maybe he just likes a lot of cheese on his broccoli. I don't know. If he does, I can relate. I like cheese on my broccoli too, so good for him. Anyway, he seems like a pretty solid dude. He's not on drugs or anything. Very sensible person. He was a heavy equipment operator. He had a home and he had a wife and everything. Lived a normal life. What passes as normal anyway in this society. And he started taking seizures. He has a neurological condition that started to come out. And he started taking seizures. Well, obviously you can't operate heavy equipment when you're taking seizures. That's not safe. So they pulled his licenses, his credentials. Of course, he lost his job. Because without his credentials, he can't do what he does, So he went from being a very highly paid specialist, a very highly paid professional with a wife and a home and everything, and he lost it all. His wife left him. He lost his home. Um, he's now living in the woods. Now he's moved up north to the Sudbury area, and he's living in the woods up there now. And he has a job, a part-time job at a marina. He works. I guess they have like a little store there and whatnot, and he works in the store and whatnot. And he's doing his best. He's trying to get onto a disability pension, and the government doesn't want to give it to him. He's worthy of it. His health is such that he should be able to get it, but they don't want him to have it. And he did a video where he talked about how when he visits his doctor, it's happened several times to him now. They say, before you see the doctor, we want you to speak with these people. And they'll take him into a little room. And he said it looks like an interrogation room in a police station. It's just a room in there, and there's nothing in there but 3 chairs. 1 chair for him, and 2 chairs for the people who he's supposed to be seeing, who want to talk to him. And he said they have a big security guard, a big burly man, stand outside the door to give you the impression that you're not allowed to leave until they dismiss you. And anyway, they take him into the room there, and they try to convince him to avail himself of MAID. They try to convince him that he should allow them to kill him. They try to tell him how easy it would be just to allow them to kill him. Now, imagine that's what's happening in this country. That's what's happening in Canada. That's our healthcare system. I don't think we should call it a healthcare system. At this point, I don't think we should, really, but that's what we call it. Yeah. See, they don't want him to continue pushing to get a pension. They don't want to give him a pension. They don't want him burdening the healthcare system. They don't want him to be a burden to society. That's what it boils down to. And that's how they see him, as a burden to society. Now, I mean, myself, I see him as an unfortunate who did his best, but his body failed him, and he needs help. And a compassionate society will help somebody like that. But no, instead, our society wants to kill him. Our healthcare system wants to murder that man. That's what it boils down to. Because they're saying, oh, he's going to cost us a lot of money. You know, he's going to cost the system a lot of money. If he gets this pension, that's going to be money out of the system. He's going to be coming to the doctor, coming to the hospital. We don't want to deal with this. It's going to be expensive. It's going to be time consuming. It'd be so much easier if he would just let us kill him. That's the attitude. Tell me that isn't the spirit of Antichrist. When people came to Jesus to be healed, he didn't say, hey, go away. Why don't you just go kill yourself? You know, he didn't say that. He healed them. And of course, he had the supernatural power to do it. But the bottom line is, it did take something out of him, though, because there was the story of the woman who had what they said an issue of blood, which isn't an uncommon thing. A lot of women, when they get into their 40s especially, I've known several women, I've had female friends this happened to, where they just start to bleed. They get a period that doesn't end. You know, normally a woman's period lasts a few days. They get a period that'll go on for a year. Doesn't end, they just bleed. And they end up having to have a hysterectomy or some other such thing in order to make it stop. Like I say, I have several female friends this has happened to. My phone now, I can tell it's taking screenshots of me for some reason. I'm not causing it to do it, but that's what it's doing. Because it just flashed twice now. It's taken 2 screenshots of me. They don't like what I'm saying. And the phone now has, I guess, ratted me out. At least that's what I think has happened. And I know I sound paranoid. But I know to some people it'll sound like paranoia, but the phone literally just took 2 screenshots of me in a row. Anyway, getting back to what I was saying that's causing the phone to take the screenshots, I think. Um, there was a woman who touched Jesus' cloak in the crowd, and he felt the energy go out of him. And she was healed. She touched him, and she was healed, and the bleeding stopped. Now you got to remember too, in that society, a menstruating woman was considered to be contaminated. They had to have separate everything when they were menstruating. They couldn't eat with their family. They couldn't they couldn't sleep with their husband. They had to be kept separate. When they used to put them in a tent and keep them separate from everybody when they were menstruating. So for her to touch Jesus, that was a big deal. But she touched Jesus and the bleeding stopped. She was healed. And when that happened, he stopped because he didn't realize that she was going to do that. She touched him, and he said, "Who touched me?" He felt it. He said, "Who touched?" He said, I felt the energy. I felt the holiness go." He said, "Who touched me?" I felt the energy go out of me. Who touched me? So see, and when she was very apologetic, she was ashamed of herself. She was happy to be healed, but she was ashamed that she'd done that. And Jesus told her, "No, sister, don't be ashamed," basically, and you're healed, and now go and live, and you're healed. So good on you, and good on you for having the faith to do what you just did. So he wasn't mad at her, but he just knew that somebody had touched him, and that somebody had just been healed, and he felt the energy leave him. So it did take something out of him to do it, but he didn't begrudge it. He was able to do it, and he didn't begrudge it. He was happy that that woman was healed, and he was happy that she had that much faith. And the fact that she touched him was a huge big deal, because like I say, you have to understand how it was in that society. And for a woman to touch a man like that, for one thing, and especially a menstruating woman, and especially to touch a man who was regarded as a holy man by many people, and Jesus was a holy man. Now, the higher ups in society didn't like him because they were threatened by him, because they were corrupt, and they were threatened by him, so they didn't like him. But and of course, society, the lower people, turned on him because they followed the higher ups, and they got all stirred up when false accusations were made by the higher ups and so on. But he was pretty well regarded during his ministry, for most of it, as a very holy man. It was a huge big deal for her to do what she did. And Jesus recognized that, and he knew the kind of faith that she had to have to do what she did. And he loved her. He showed her love. He was happy that she had done that. When he asked, "Who touched me?" because I felt the energy go, that wasn't an admonishment. That was just a wanting. Okay, who touched me? Somebody did. I want to know who touched me. And which anybody would. If you're in a crowd and somebody touches you, you want to know who's touching me. But the thing is, and why, But the thing is, it goes to show it did take something out of him. But he didn't begrudge it. He was happy that that woman had that much faith. He loved her for having that much faith. That she would do something that in that society was extremely taboo. Like I say, anyway, this phone did just take a couple of screenshots of me a few minutes ago for some reason. So that's interesting. But Yeah, we're living in pretty weird times anyway. This video is over an hour long now, so I'm going to shut it down. It's now nearly 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm going to start uploading it now. It probably won't be fully uploaded until sometime tomorrow evening because it takes forever for these things to load with the phone. But anyway, bottom line, the spirit of Antichrist is now very active in Canada. I believe that it's really more targeting the United States, but it's starting here because we're more vulnerable. See, the devil always goes for the vulnerable. The Bible says that he's like a lion who wanders around looking for whom he might devour. Well, what does a lion eat? A lion eats the vulnerable. It looks for the weak within the herd. Looks for the very young and the very old and the disabled, the injured. If you're a gazelle and you get injured, it won't be long before you'll be lion poop, because you can't keep up with the herd. You can't defend yourself. You're the one the lion is going to go for. If you're very young, if you're just like a calf or whatever they call a baby gazelle, again, you can't defend yourself. If the lion can get you away from the herd will protect you. But if the lion can't get you away from the herd, if the lion can get you away from the herd, it'll eat you. If you wander off or whatever and you're not noticed right away, the lion will get you. And they sit on the sidelines and they watch the herd and they just wait for an opportunity like that. That's what the devil does too. Canada is the weak link. And so Canada is being used. Mexico is being used too, because all this stuff with people coming across the border to destabilize the United States, most of that is happening through Mexico. So Mexico is a weak link in a different way. And the devil is using both Canada and Mexico to destabilize and weaken the United States. And that has to happen in order for this new world order plan to come into place. The United States especially can't survive if that plan is going to come into place. Anyway, that's it. I'm up to a minute, and I'm up to 1 hour and 7 minutes now, nearly 8 minutes. So I'll sign off here. I'm not worried about what happened with the screenshots, by the way. I do suspect that those screenshots went off somewhere and that I've now been reported by my own phone for talking like I'm talking. But I'm not worried about it. Just to be clear, I'm not worried about it. All right. I'm going to try to go back to sleep. Good night, everybody.